Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful sun-swept family weekend. We got so lucky. Well, I'm Mark Conroy. I'm the Director of Athletics here at Williston, and I wanted to welcome everyone to our 6th annual Student-Athlete College Recruiting Panel. This panel will serve as an opportunity for those student-athletes who aspire to play in college to better understand the college recruitment process. This is my 23rd year as the AD at Williston, and we have always had a remarkable percentage of our graduates go off and play in college. Last year, our senior class had nearly 50 graduates who are playing in college this coming year, which is really kind of remarkable. And the class of 23 already has 17 of its our seniors who are committed to playing college next year. We are very fortunate to live where we live, surrounded by all of these colleges and resources, and we have a terrific panel today, and I wanted to introduce our panelists. First, we have Daisy Elise Dinma. She's an Assistant Athletic Director for Recruiting, Retention, and Student Athlete Leadership Development at Springfield College. Daisy was with us last year, and so I really appreciate her return. We also have Matt Reynolds. Matt is the head baseball coach at the University of Massachusetts. In 2017, Coach Reynolds was named the head baseball coach at the University of Massachusetts, succeeding longtime head coach Mike Stone. Following a successful playing career at UMass, during which he was named the team's most valuable player as a senior, Coach Reynolds served as a graduate assistant for his alma mater for 2 years before moving on to the Naval Academy, where he was an assistant coach for 7 years. Following his stint at Navy, he then served as the head coach of Washington College in Maryland for 3 years before returning to his native New England to accept the head coaching position at UMass. Welcome, Matt. Appreciate it. I actually didn't read Daisy's bio, so I apologize. But here's a little bit about Daisy. Daisy has been on the athletic admin team at Springfield College since 2020. She brings a wealth of experiences to her leadership role at Springfield as an administrator, former NCAA Division I athlete, an international competitor, and someone who has done extensive work in the realm of student-athlete development. Prior to arriving at Springfield, Daisy was a 4-year women's basketball standout at Virginia Commonwealth University, where she was a 2-time Atlantic 10 All-Conference selection, played professionally in Spain, was a member of the Nigerian women's national team. She also earned her master's at VCU in sports leadership. So welcome, Daisy. And finally, we have Mira Rodriguez, who was an assistant women's basketball coach at Amherst College. Western Massachusetts native Mira joined the Amherst College women's staff just this year. Mira played collegiately at Skidmore College, where she helped the Thoroughbreds win the Liberty League Championship in 2018. She served on the Student Athlete Advisory Committee for 3 years at Skidmore and was named to the Liberty League All-Academic Team. She graduated in 2021 with a bachelor's degree in management and business and a minor in sociology. She grew up locally and was a 2-year captain and NEPSAC All-Star at Wilbraham and Munson Academy, where she was also a member of the volleyball and track and field teams as well. So welcome, Mira. So I'd like to start off by asking Mira a question. Mira, could you share a few thoughts about the commitment to play a sport in college, and what is the time commitment like to be a Division III athlete?
Can you guys hear me without the mic? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's definitely at least a part-time job. Out of season, you're probably looking at about 15 hours a week of commitments with lifts, meetings, pickup, things like that. Once you're in season, it probably doubles to 25, maybe 30 hours a week, including travel for games and all of that kind of stuff. So definitely a big commitment, but at the D3 level, it's really up to the student athletes and how much work they want to put in out of season.
Matt, can you answer the same question for an aspiring athlete who plays at the Division I level?
Sure, yeah, we have, a little bit of, I guess, going from Division III into Division I, we've got some expanded hours that we can work with that are a little bit more. So when we're in season, it's 20 hours a week on the books as far as what we can do with our student athletes. And then there's also a period, at least for baseball, and every sport has it a little bit different, but we've got a 45-day window here in the fall that we're right in the middle of, where that mirrors the spring. So even now, for a 45-day period, we're gonna go 20 hours a week with them. So And then outside of that, we're allowed to do 8 hours a week, and 4 of those can be skill related. So it really, it's the entire time that they're there, minus, you know, their winter break, and they take us away from them for 7 days prior to their finals so they can pass their classes and everything. But it's, I mean, their day is, at minimum, you can count on at least 3 hours a day for all of our student athletes, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, where they're either lifting or they're at practice. And that's not to say anything of the work they put in on their own either. So it's, it very much takes up quite a bit of their time, and it's a huge commitment. There's a huge commitment. I can illustrate that with people. Sometimes we have people that want to try out for the team, and then they come to one practice and say, I really appreciate the opportunity, coach. I can't do this. You know, this is it's a lot. It is a lot. So it really takes a level of dedication that's unique to be able to make it work and still do all the other things that you have to do in college.
Thank you. Daisy, can you talk a little bit about the importance of choosing a school that you feel is a great fit regardless of the athletic component?
Yeah, so one thing that I really encourage, and I talk to like high school students and even students when they get into college, is ensuring that you're picking a school that outside of your respective sport that you actually want to play, that you would want to be at that school if that sport did not exist. So for my own personal recruiting thing, when I went to Virginia Commonwealth, I was like, is this a school that I could be happy at if I didn't play basketball here? So you want to look at other things like academically. Do they have the major that suits you? Because if anything were to happen and you couldn't play your sport anymore, would that school and that campus still be the best fit for you? So I think it's really important that you look at, does it have what I need academically? Does it have what I need in terms of cultural, in terms of like, is this a place where I see myself? Do I need a more urban school? Do I need a more rural type of school? So just making sure that those types of factors that really are important to you, that you put that into your decision when it comes to deciding on a school. Also the clubs and orgs, you know, just in case things happen again where you can't play your sport or you have the capability to actually do more outside of your athletic abilities, you want to really make sure that they have clubs and organizations that also fit who you are and align with what you want to be and what you want to do once you leave the realm of college. So it's just really important that when you're going to schools and you're visiting, you take away the sport aspect while you're there for the time being for a little bit and make sure, is this campus really my field? Do I actually enjoy the people here, the community around me, like the means and modes of transportation, all of those things, because that's really going to play a huge role into how much you actually acclimate and adjust while there. And it makes it that much easier if you like the school outside of just going to it for the sport that you want to be there for.
Great, thank you very much. Mira, can you talk a little bit about the timeline for an aspiring college athlete? And is it different for each sport?
Yeah, so for Division III, we're, according to the NCAA rules, allowed to start making contact junior year. The timing of that will vary by sport, so most coaches prioritize recruiting when we're out of season. So for winter sport, that looks like a lot of heavy recruiting in the summer and in the fall, and then going into the spring as well. For fall sports, that really picks up around this time of year, going into November. So it will vary depending on the season of your sport, but junior year is when you can expect Division III coaches to start making contact. And that'll look like phone calls, invitations to elite camps. It will vary depending on the sport and depending on the student athlete, but junior year for sure.
Coach Reynolds, how about for you at the Division I level? When does the recruiting process start? When do you start looking at kids?
Yeah, so it's really different. There's a lot of variables to this. It's vastly different even across Division I. You know, and some of the variables that go into it are, you know, the level within Division I that you're at, the scholarships that you have, the region that you're in, your coaching and recruiting philosophy. But generally speaking, you know, kind of the higher up the pecking order, if you will, the earlier that those guys are competing for some of the best talent out there. I mean, there's literally in baseball, there's some people that haven't played high school baseball yet, which is crazy, that are committed to schools. And it's, yes, it doesn't make sense. It probably doesn't work out all that often either. But, you know, when you get up to those highest levels, it's kind of, yes, there are rules to it as well, but, you know, people are competing for talent, and if somebody else doesn't offer them a spot, then, you know, somebody else will. But at least the world that we live in, at UMass is, you know, we've been done with our 2023 class for, not completely done, but mostly done for, you know, a good bit now. We are visiting people from the 2024 class. We don't have anybody committed right now. But, you know, we're very much into that class right now. And then, you know, we have a little bit of an eye on the 2025 class. But, you know, nobody really coming on campus or nothing serious there. So rules-wise, very similar. We can start calling people as soon as they start their junior year, but all of that is circumvented. If we're talking about early commitments, all of that is circumvented at the higher levels where you guys can call, prospective student athletes can call us at any time. So you might figure out pretty quickly how that works. You know, one of us, not me necessarily, but somebody else, hypothetically speaking, would just say, hey coach, I really like that guy. You know, I know he's in 8th grade, but you know, here's my phone number. If he wants to call me, then he can call me, all right? And then, you know, the coach sets up a time and then the call happens and then that's how it kind of works, and we work around the rules at that, you know, again, at the highest levels. When you just look at it, it's like, okay, the rules don't add up to, they can't be contacted until they start their junior year, yet he's committed and he's a freshman. That's kind of how that works. So, so again, it is different for everybody, and there's a lot of variables to it. And I would just, from a recommendation standpoint, I would just say, speaking to what was just said here, like find a school, find an institution that is a good fit for you. All right, there's a reason that there's 2,500 Division I baseball players alone in the transfer portal right now. It is because they're not finding the right fits and they're getting cut and people are being over recruited and they're just not ending up, the school and the prospective student athlete aren't a good fit for each other to start with. And that's not the only reason for transfer, but that's part of why we have such a crazy volume of transfers right now.
Coach Reynolds, this is a follow-up. How do you know if the interest from a college is genuine, that you are truly being recruited? I know there's a lot of information, there's a lot of email, there's a lot of just, how do you know if it's genuine?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is a little bit of a gray area, but I would say generally speaking, are you getting communication from a member of the coaching staff that goes beyond, you know, something that would just generally be sent out, that goes beyond a camp invite, you know, that is specific to you? Hey, I saw you at this place specifically, you know, maybe they reference what they saw, and I was like, yeah, okay, he didn't see me, that's me, right? I'm 85, 88, I'm this, I'm that. And then, you know, you're invited to come on campus, things of that nature that go beyond, hey, I got a generic letter, or I got, you know, a camp invite and things like that. So, and again, that's not a perfect answer, but, you know, once it gets to that level, if you get a phone call, if you get something that's specific to you and maybe referencing, I saw you at this place, and here's where we think you may fit into our recruiting class. We want you to come on, something that's personal. And I would say too, to add on to that, that's reciprocated too. A lot of times we have to look at our communications that we receive mostly through email and figure out, okay, what constitutes a student athlete that's genuinely interested in our institution? Because we get a lot of automatic emails that we assume go to everybody else in the country. You always see that right at the top. You see Coach Reynolds and it's in a different font than all the rest of the email, you know, and it's like, okay, how many other coaches are on this? Sometimes we'll get them, you know, I'll get them from, you know, Coach Harry, he's at UMass Lowell, or I'll get them, you know, Coach Corbin, you know, who's at Vanderbilt, and it was like, okay, somebody made a little mistake on their automatic emails here. So it kind of goes both ways, you know, when it comes to that.
Sounds great. Daisy, how would you recommend starting the recruiting process? And what are the things that an aspiring college athlete should be doing if they hope to be recruited?
Kind of similar to Coach Reynolds, I would just make sure that, one, you do your research. I'm big on that. So do your research of the college. So like for myself, like Springfield College, even as a professional, it aligns with who I am morally and ethically. Our mission is to promote spirit, mind, and body, and to help through service of leadership. So those are things that I love to do personally. So I knew that coming there as a professional, it would be a really good fit. So when it comes to the recruiting process, do your research. Like, you know, a lot has been going on in the world. Like, where has the school been in terms of like equity? Where has the school been in terms of the things that they do to promote like the intersectionalities of your students and the things that are actually important to you? So understanding where they are and benchmarking that is one of the first things that I always encourage students to do. And then when it comes to that as well, you want to make sure that your grades are great. So I can speak for the Division III level. We don't offer athletic scholarships. So everything that you do is based off of the merit of your academic record in high school. So everything from your freshman year all the way up to the senior year plays a huge role in everything that we do. So I'm half athletics and half admissions, and so we look at your transcripts and recalc your grades. And if your grades recalc up to like the highest caliber for your GPA, you'll get the highest merit scholarship we have to offer. But if they don't, it translates over really poorly, and it just makes it that much harder to get into a school you may necessarily want to get into if the numbers don't work out financially. So it's just really important that as you are finishing up high school, to really make sure that you're putting yourself in the best situation to make sure that if you're aspiring to be a D3 athlete, that you're making sure your grades are really truly top of the line, because that will predicate how much money the school would be able to offer you based on academic scholarships. Outside of that, similar to Coach Reynolds, make sure that you're reaching out to the coaches. You know, we get a lot of like generic and forwarded emails from the admission saying that, hey, I'm interested in this sport, but then I always follow up with admissions. I'm like, well, has the student reached out to the coach yet? And they're like, no. So I definitely encourage you, if you're really interested in a school and that sport specifically, reach out to the coach, not the parents. I always say this because parents love being involved. We do not want to hear from you. We love you, we adore you, we know you want the best for your student, but when it comes to reaching out for actually the sport, we want to see the student take onus in that. Because eventually you're going to drop them off and they're going to have to be responsible for their experience on campus. So we want to make sure that they're taking responsibility, reaching out to the coach, setting up meetings, setting up times to get on campus, because sometimes coaches don't know what they don't have until they see it, you know? And so sometimes it's really important that you also recruit the school that you want to go to as much as the school is recruiting you to be there as well. So those are just some of the things. If you have film, our coaches love to see film, because then that'll really spark an interest of like, okay, you know, this is the type of student that we need. This is the type of player that we need to fill this gap. I can speak for in terms of basketball. It's kind of like, okay, if my coach was losing like 2 guards, a shooting guard, and a small forward, we know that their recruiting class is going to consist of those types of things. So athletes, ask those types of questions, like what players are you looking for? Because like Coach said, students are being over-recruited at a crazy rate right now, especially with you all following the line of you're going to be in competition with students who still have that additional COVID year. And so students are coming back who you didn't necessarily think were going to come back. They're taking a grad school. And then so now it's just kind of like you thought you were going to have that spot, but then you really have to wait maybe like another year or so to actually get that. So just asking the coach where they are, what type of players they're looking for, the types of offense, defense, things that they run, to make sure that they actually align also with your athletic goals and what you like doing. There's nothing worse than going to a school that runs an offense or something that you're not accustomed to or doesn't fit your personal athletic style. It doesn't make sense. So just kind of like doing your research and making sure that the school really does fit and align, but that you also ask those coaches those hard questions.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Forgive my ignorance. I think a few moments ago you talked about recalcing
GPA?
grades. Yeah, could you expand on that? I'm not sure I know what that means.
So we get their unofficial transcripts,
Yep.
and so then with our system at Springfield, we'll put in their grades, the courses that they took, and recalc it predicated off of our own system.
I got it.
And so then we recalc what that is, and then dependent, so your student might have a 3.6 at their high school, but at the collegiate level, it's really like a 3.5.
Got it.
And so we just recalc it to make sure that we're giving you the proper merit scholarship for where you fall.
Okay, thanks. It's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Mira, can you talk a little bit about recruiting websites and showcases, and how important are these to being recruited? Because we know there's a lot of them out there these days.
Yeah, there's a ton. And every school is going to be different. So some schools are heavily reliant on recruiting websites like NCSA and things like that. And it really varies on the school, and you won't necessarily know if the school that you're targeting is recruiting using the same websites or resources that you're used to using. I'd say what's more important, just to echo what Daisy said, is to reach out to those coaches directly. Send us an email that's not generic, that has our names spelled correctly and in all the right font and things like that. include your highlights, preferably include a full game tape. Everyone looks good on their highlight reel, but the more film, the better. So make contact directly, and if you are going to be going to recruiting showcases and traveling throughout the summer and playing spring ball and things like that, definitely reach out to those coaches and include your schedules. We try to recruit as much as possible and as a wide variety of showcases and things as possible, but we don't always have the bandwidth that Division I schools have and things like that. So we really try to prioritize kids who have the grades first and foremost, but also kids who want to come to Amherst. So if we know that a kid who really is interested in Amherst will be at a specific showcase, we'll try our best to get there and make sure that we see them. But it really varies school by school, so make contact early with those schools and find out where they're going to be. And if it's an individual showcase that school is confirmed that they're going to be at, it's definitely worth it to go and put yourself in front of those coaches. But a lot of recruiting websites out there, so don't rely too heavily on them because every school is different.
Anything to add, Coach Reynolds, just about showcases, and is that something that your staff attends?
Yeah, so it's a mix for us of different things that we'll attend. So tournaments, some individual sign-up showcases. There's a model that went into play probably about 20 years ago, is that they have these private companies that will pay the college coaches to be there, so therefore they can, barring emergency or something like that, guarantee that you'll be able to play in front of a member of this staff, and that model has really taken off and became an incredible business. I probably should have been on that side of things, make a whole lot more money that way. But a lot of those are very, very expensive, but at least it's like, okay, I'm gonna do something over the next 2 days in front of these 80 schools, or so for a lot of people those can be valuable, some maybe not. But it's really it's a mixed bag of what we do from a recruiting standpoint of paid events and showcases versus tournaments and things like that. And what I would say is try to put yourself in a position where, okay, I've identified these handful of schools, they seem to be interested in me, I just need to find a way to get in front of these schools reliably, because you attend a tournament, it's like, okay, 250 coaches are going to be at this tournament, great. The tournament's spread all across Georgia at 45 different fields, some of which are 2 hours apart, and UMass has one guy down there. Well, I'm not going to see a whole lot more than I'm going to see, so don't assume just because I'm going to this spot and there's a lot of coaches there that I'm going to be seen, to the best of my ability. There's a lot out there. So trying to put yourself into these environments where you can definitely be seen by the people that, the schools that you're interested in is important. And then that comes to institutional camps as well. Attending, like I've got this list, I've had contact with these 5 schools. Let me go to a couple of their camps so I know I can be seen by their entire staff. I can get a feel for how they coach. I can see the campus if I haven't seen it yet. And that's another avenue that's beneficial for a lot of people to go to as well.
So do most colleges have their own sort of camps in the summer that they use as a recruiting vehicle? So Division III through Division I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I would imagine that would be, if you're truly interested in that school, that would be a great opportunity to get on the campus and spend some time there and be seen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Coach Reynolds, another question related to the early commitments. So we're hearing more and more these days about student athletes who are making commitments when they're freshmen in high school, sophomores in high school. In fact, it happens at Williston. We have students who come in who arrive at Williston as a 9th grader and they're already committed to a particular school. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that and sort of the early commitments? And I know that's not an easy topic.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I'm so glad that I don't have to live in that world, I will say. So I think for where you guys sit, it's a balancing act between missing out on opportunities versus doing as much homework as you can and getting to know these schools as well as you can. And there's no perfect answer to that, right? So I would say if it is you know, I think that there's some legitimate early commitments at the highest levels of at least the sport that I coach that, you know, make some sense. Now we start to get into 8th graders, like there's just so many variables there. So much can happen over 4 years on either side, right? On the institutional side or on the prospective student athlete side, that those things, you know, those two places might not line up, you know, 4 years from now or 3 years from now or even 2 years from now. So it's a little bit of balancing those things out. You know, if it's not, you know, a you know, Power 5 school, or it's like, hey, I'm on track to be a draft pick here, you know, you probably shouldn't be. Put it this way, I don't want to put any school down, so I'll use UMass. If you're committing to us as a freshman, there's probably something wrong there, right? You know, I can tell you for sure we're not paying your whole way to go to UMass because of our scholarship situation. So it's almost like some of the times you see early commitments and there's some red flags there. You know, so I would say try to do your best to really fully understand what you're committing to, and not just because a lot of those early commitments, it's kind of like, you know, it's just the glitz and glamour of, wow, I just got offered by blank school. It's like, I'm so excited about it, you know, and then you end up buying the car before you leave the lot and go home and think about what you're doing. You know, you're just so excited about the opportunity that you end up, you know, committing to that. And the other part of it is there really is not any commitment. There isn't necessarily any commitment on either side. You know, it is a verbal commitment. You're not actually committed if you're on scholarship until you sign a national letter of intent. And that's not to say that, you know, most of those commitments are honored, but they're not, you know, they're not binding commitments at that point. So there's that as well. And I'll just share this one last thing that I thought was really refreshing. So we recently got a guy in our class that was a really good get for us. And when we brought him on campus, we kind of had some trepidation, like, this guy's had a lot of interest. He's been good for a long time. He's passed up a lot of pretty good offers. Like, what's going on here, kind of thing. So we had to dig in a little bit and figure out, you know, what the situation was. And it was very refreshing to hear him and his dad sit in our locker room and say, yeah, like, we got all these offers early on. And they put a timeline on us of 48 hours. It was like, we haven't even a chance to go to the website yet, let alone step on campus. And so I was like, wow, that's really refreshing to hear that you actually wanted to do, you know, your diligence and make sure that you found the right fit for yourself. So you know, that's where I would encourage everybody to do, is just prioritize that. Prioritize trying to find the right fit and making sure that you go in with your eyes wide open and you know what you're getting yourself into.
Daisy or Mira, just regarding the Division III level and sort of, you know, I have an advisee who's just became committed to Skidmore for baseball, and so I'm just wondering, what does that mean on the Division III level? How early does that happen? I mean, I don't hear 9th or 10th graders, but does it mean an early read, that there's support from a coach? But anything you can add about sort of a Division III early commitment before they're actually admitted to the school? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So we're not giving anyone any athletic money at the Division III level, and not all schools offer academic money. Amherst does not give any merit scholarships. Everyone who comes to Amherst goes through the standard admissions process. Usually if you're committing early over the summer or early fall, that means you're probably only going to apply to that one school and apply early decision, likely ED1 around the November 1st date. That will mean that you enter the application process right away and you can have that decision back from admissions before January, but that doesn't guarantee anything. So you still have to go through the standard process of applying, keeping your grades up the whole time. If your grades slip in the spring, you can still get your admission rescinded by admission. So you still have to maintain the same standards that you had when you got into the school. But we will do early reads for our student athletes while we're recruiting them. So that just means we're sending over their transcripts to admissions prior to their admission. Admissions will take a look at it, say, yep, looks good. They're likely going to be admitted to the school, but they still have to go through the process, and anything can happen at the Division III level. So you still have to maintain the standards of your grades the whole time.
Yeah, and I won't add too much because it's very similar. The only difference is we do offer academic scholarships. So with our pre-reads and early reads, you know, if you're interested in one of our limited enrollment majors, so OT, AT, PT, PA, and those type of things, we'll say you're likely admissible, but then we'll also provide feedback for you as well with like, okay, your science classes, your sophomore and junior year were kind of low. We'll give you suggestions like to make sure that, you know, if you keep your grades up and you get a really good science grade, it'll make you that much of a stronger competitor to get into one of our limited enrollment courses. Or we'll say, okay, this looks amazing. The only thing that would make your application stronger when it comes to finally applying to Common App is if you add in shadowing hours. And so our admissions team will give those types of reads to make sure that you know what to do in order to make your application the most competitive that it can be for some of our limited enrollments. And then for our traditional enrollments, so everything else outside of those 5 that I just mentioned, you'll get a likely admissible to, let's say, a big one for us is PE. So we're a big PE school, likely admissible to physical education. And then we'll also say, and you're likely admissible to receive the presidential scholarship of $20,000 per academic year. And so we'll let you know those types of information. That way, financially, your families and all can get together and try to figure out, like, okay, is it going to be financially feasible to actually attend this school based on the money that we're saying that you're likely to get based on your academics. And then, of course, everything else goes into play with financial aid, which is another additional story. But we try to make sure that we get as much information out to the families so that they can make the best feasible decision before committing to trying to come to Springfield.
Coaches, just, I know we've covered this to some degree.